In this episode of the Beamable Game Dev Podcast, I sit down with Adam Walters and we talk about the development of Killer Queen Black. Let's jump into the interview. All right, well, I got Adam Walters, who is one of the devs behind Killer Queen Black. Adam, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic. So I got a little bit of a history with you guys. I connected with you guys at E3 2019, and of course fell in love with the game, and wanted to reconnect and just kind of share some of the story behind Killer Queen Black, what it is, and the journey of developing it. So I'm gonna let you do your favorite job and explain what is Killer Queen
My
Black.
E3 pitch that I probably did back then. Yeah, it's a hard game to explain. It's it's a very team-based multiplayer game. I think we call it an action platformer. Um, there's three ways to win. So you can kill the queen three times. Each team has one queen. You can also run berries, try to put 12 berries in your hive, or which is called an economic victory. Or you can ride the snail. There's a little snail, move slow. Try to get it to your side. So that's kind of like a tug of war that goes on. So the cool part is it's very team focused. Because there's three different ways to win, you have to keep an eye on all of those. So maybe you have a really good queen, but you can outmanage them or outsmart them by going for berries, or at least distract them and pull them over in that regard. So yeah, that's the main thing. It's 8 players. So you can form groups and form teams and go in that way. You can just jump into quick play or ranked, or create customs. We have a lot of people that a lot of leagues that have started up, or a number of leagues that form actual seasons and tournaments, and compete that way, which is really cool to see. The community is amazing, just in the ways that are outside of the actual what we've developed in the game for supporting a community. People have taken it on their own to form these kind of competitive leagues, which is it's really cool to see as a developer.
I bet. Is the black team still a thing? Is it still
It's
happening?
it's it's still there. It's not certain whether we'll get around to it. It's one of those things that it's really hard to work out all the nuances of how it would play out. You know, like
I see.
um and about who becomes the black team, whether it's global, whether it's region based. Yeah, so it's something we'd like we really would like to get to it, but it's not certain whether we'll be able to pull that off. So
I got you. And the way that was explained, the team with the most points, or however you guys decided to do it, was going to be black instead of blue or yellow, right?
yeah, exactly. It was in concept when it was kicked around, it was almost like a king of the hill.
Sure.
So if I was playing the black team and you were a challenger that faced me and you beat me, then you would have black team skins.
Got it.
Which also is the other kind of how do we handle this is if you play with a crew, 3 of your friends, sure, that's kind of easy. We have a team we can associate it with. But if you're just jumping into ranked and we place you against them, it becomes a little trickier. It's well, now we have 4 people that don't play together all the time. How do we divvy up who the black team members are?
Right. Yeah. At that point, it seems like
Oh, go ahead, sir.
it's got to basically be yo, you can only, this is team based, strictly team based. You can only bring your crew here, and that's it.
Right. Yeah. And it's well, then is it as long as you play? Is it, how does that work? They're in concept, we love the idea. It's
Sure.
just the more we dug into it, it's like, and this is the developer in me. It's like, well, how the hell are we gonna do that?
Yeah. No, I get.
There's a
I
lot of
remember.
nuances there.
Yeah, and I remember thinking that too. And I was when you guys were, I was like, man, how are they gonna tackle all that? Because it seems like it seems, it's like, yeah, like you're saying, if you got three people on one team and then this random, then does that random still just show
Well,
up?
you brought
Or
up E3, and I remember, I mean, that was the first conference I've ever presented on. I mean, this is the first game I've ever worked on or built. But I remember we were just Mike and I, like, he's like the other chief architect, like him and I built a majority of this. Watching it just exhausted in LA. And then we like see a stream, and it was one of the guys we worked with from Bumblebear, uh who are Josh Drabonis and Nick Mikos. Uh him like in an interview being like talking about the black team. We're like, oh, we've just kicked around this idea. Like, don't go on an E3 stream and say we haven't flushed this out yet, man.
oh, you gotta love it. Well, I think there's some good information that we can kind of glean from you about that E3 experience and cons going forward. I know the world's been in chaos for the last, you know, year, 2 years now, but um what, like, prepping for E3, and then just the overall experience on the show floor, like, for any devs that are thinking about presenting, once we kind of get back to normal, any words of wisdom or anything you can share with us?
Yeah. One, don't make an 8-player game. Like, it'll get through the line quick, but and being able to get your elevator pitch just down. Like, if you're presenting anywhere, I don't care where it is, whether it's a local game dev like thing, or hell, you're just bringing over some friends. Like, try to get it as short and concise as possible and get them in the game. It's it's hard to try to explain every rule up front and maintain their interest when they just want to play a game. So it's like, kind of like, get them going, get as much information as they know, to start playing and having fun, and fill in the blanks. That's kind of like at least the presentation part of it. Otherwise, building a game, like building a mode, like, it's not going to be in the end game, but I think we called it demo mode, was like a feature flag in our game, which would just be like optimizing that path of like, choose your character, play the game, see the end screen for a bit, and go right back in. So you're not like fumbling with menus. Like,
Gotcha.
there's usually one person that's like, controller that's controlling everything. And then you have to track down who that is. It's like, try to make that as seamless as possible. You know, like, just that cycle of, you know, the game loop, essentially. Like,
Yeah, who's
just
who's
kind of
player
like,
one?
just, yeah, get you in as quick as possible with the least friction. Because like, it sucks to walk around and be like, who's got player one, right? Like, in a setting like E3, like, everyone take your hands off the controller, and one by one, like, press the A button. We'll see from there. Like, trying to minimize that, like, makes a lot of things smoother. And that's something we learned as we presented more and more, um, was like optimizing that path. Because it was, I mean, E3, like I said, was probably our biggest event we ever did. We did PAX after that, a couple PAX events, but like, those went smoother because of what we learned each time, which was just, in the E3 show floor, like, walking around trying to get people to figure out who's player one. And then they're swapping controllers. Like, it's a mess.
Yeah, I remember you guys were using the Xbox One controllers, and they were no help either because they don't show you who,
Well,
like,
not at
there's.
PAX or not at E3.
Oh,
Nintendo would not. They wouldn't allow that. Like,
oh,
like we had wired Joy-Cons. That was like one of the catches. We had to get specifically wired Joy-Cons because there's so many cell phones and interference
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah,
like
yeah.
any sort of like Bluetooth disruption causes a big deal in the game. We definitely used them at PAX because Microsoft had us in their booth at the time. Um,
I
but
see.
yeah,
And maybe that's where I may have run into you there as well. So that's like
yeah.
I because I just I remember that, like I remember what you're talking about, like who's player one right now, who's past the like, so, but that's great. I mean, making sure everything is easy as possible, because I mean, I remember they had like this broadcast booth right next to you guys at E3,
Mhm.
and
Oh,
uh
it was right above us. It was the Treehouse Live.
yeah, and well, and they even on the show floor there was a like this glass booth, and it was like it looked right at your guys' booth, and I remember sitting in there uh doing some recording. I mean, you guys were nonstop. Like, you were just nonstop. Like,
That being the first show, I've never been so exhausted. Like after like explaining the game over and over with people just like they wait in line for like 2 hours or whatever it is, and like they just want to play a game, and it's like, I got to get through this. It's just so like rapid, like, and it doesn't stop. Like people will just be there, at the end of the show just to get one more like
one
run
more
around
game?
of the games. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like even when you think you're like, oh, we're only hour and a half left, like it's gonna die down. No, it doesn't.
No way. Yeah. So, let's get a little bit of history with Killer Queen Black. Like, what, like the idea of the game, and then how you guys went about, pitching it or whatever to get it out on consoles.
Sure. The three like kind of founding members of Liquid Bit are me, Matt, Tesh, and Mike Chorak. Um, we've worked together for years before that, doing kind of like mobile app development, web app development. Just we always kind of like worked with each other and kind of hit a point where we weren't happy where we were. Um, and we got like a founder Justice to like help out and like kind of like provide some funding for it, and we decided like we wanted to make a game. And before that, we had went to a bar in Chicago called Logan Arcade, which has Killer Queen Arcade. So we're Killer Queen Black with KQB, they're KQA, Killer Queen Arcade. So they created the original like core of the game, and like the arcade game's amazing. And we went and played it at Logan Arcade, and we're just blown away. So the arcade game's 5 on 5, right? So we had a bunch of friends, and we basically made a night of it, of going there, and fell in love with it. And so in this venture that we wanted to make a game, and we got some funding, we ended up prototyping it out to be a network game, because like it's like there's nothing like the experience of 5 people on one side of a cabinet and 5 on the other.
Sure.
Like there's nothing that can match that, and we're lucky that we had one in Chicago. But like we just thought, like, wouldn't it be cool to be able to bring this more accessible? Like there's I don't remember what their count is now, but mostly major cities in a lot of ways. But like someone that like where I grew up in, small town of 2000 in Minnesota, like you're not going to have access to that.
Right.
So how can we bring that experience to them? And so before we approached Bumblebear, we actually made like an online prototype of the game with the same rules as Killer Queen Arcade. Um, and we got in a call with them, and like actually like they were in New York, we're in Chicago, um, and played. and they, I guess we showed them that we could essentially make it happen, right? And like the original arcade game, right, is there's no button to attack. It's just like joust rules. So if
I
you're
see.
above someone, you kill them. That's tricky to get really well in an online game, and especially with 8 people. Like, like there's rollback, and then there's like also like lockstep, which is like lockstep's really good for like that's where like any online game you played like freezes because it needs everyone to report back and like handshake and then send it down. Well, like that breaks down once you hit about 4 people or more. Right? Like if you're waiting on 8 people to report back, and then like it just causes issues.
Sure.
And that's kind of why we it wasn't just a port of Killer Queen Arcade. We realized like we needed to modify it to work on consoles. So instead of 5-on-5, it's 4-on-4, right? Which and part of that is like a lot of systems have about 8 controller limitations,
Hmm.
right? There's not many consoles you can do 5-on-5. So that was part of it. And then, in the arcade, it's like a, I don't know, 42-inch or whatever screen right in your face that you're like this close to. Um, that like playing on a couch, that scale wasn't going to work the same. You just see a little blip running around versus like so like in reducing the number of players and also making the map smaller essentially. Those are a lot of the like the main changes that, and then like I said, the attack system, instead of being like touch based, we added a button because that can like mask latency in a bit, right?
Got it. Okay.
Like you're like, oh, I hit it, but maybe I hit it too low, versus something as just discreet as like I'm higher when we came in contact. Um,
Yeah.
like that was a big change, like adding a button to attack and different weapon, and then that transformed into different weapons too. Um, so we took the original game and kind of modified it to what would work in an online based console version of the game. So like that's why like the differences from KQB and Killer Queen Arcade kind of came from was a bit of necessity, you know.
Yeah, that's actually super cool to hear. I didn't like I didn't realize any of this. I really thought the game was just essentially a port of the arcade game. I
No,
think I've
yeah.
seen the arcade game in the wild like one time, but I don't think I've had the chance to play it.
Oh, I mean,
So,
if you can find one, it's a blast. I mean, like, we have. I always think of our art styles as like NES versus SNES. Like,
mhm,
we're both pixel art games of Killer Queen. It's just a slight, it's a slight evolution too. And and that doesn't necessarily mean like better or worse. It's just, we didn't want it to be the same game. Like, and that
gotcha.
I think, and that was large. I mean, at first, that's what we were going for, but that's what was cool about working with the original like designers and developers of Killer Queen Arcade. Is just like I think they wanted to try something new, and me, Matt, and Mike are all very engineering based people. So like working with guys that are very, technical, but also game design based was I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better situation for like building our first game. It's like you get not only is the game you really wanted to make, you're working with the guys that made it and you can learn from them, which was really cool.
Yeah, that's super cool. Let's go back like I think the funniest thing is this game originated as a game that was played in the park. Is that correct?
Yeah, like the original Killer Queen arcade, I believe was made. I know there's a field game, and I believe from there is when they decided to make an arcade game out of it.
Yeah.
So people running around with foam balls, like those are the berries,
Yeah.
and what are those?
What was the
Those things
snail?
that you like help you keep you like afloat in a pool, like those
A pool
like
noodle?
a noodle. That's what I was going for. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, those are your swords that you would swing. So like things like that. Yeah, and like you can, I believe it's on Bubble Bear's website. They
Oh,
have the field game rules like
it,
out there, like what you need, how to play.
that is amazing. I need to look it up because I've always wondered. I'm like, okay, what's this? What's the snail represent? Is there like one of those like the horse head with the stick coming out of
Yeah,
it? That like,
exactly. Like the wooden like pony that you're
yeah, I've always kind of wondered. So,
and that's what's
uh,
cool to me though, is that like they right like I said, I'm an engineer, but like seeing like that a game designer, it doesn't matter the medium. They can create just cool experiences like games. Like it could be on a field, an arcade, a console, like that, and that's something I really admire. Like because I like I said, I'm engineering focused. Like I have things I like and dislike in games, but like to be able to like come up with like balance and things like that uh is just like I just have such admiration for people that can do that.
it's super cool. I'm like this the whole history of the game, everything it all played a part in just like really getting its hooks in me, right? And I remember like I kind of did a little bit of an event. Like you guys had a big sale on the game, and it was out on Switch, and within my community, everybody was playing it. My kids were absolutely loving it. Like I've never seen my I think myself, my wife, and my two daughters were playing it, and my youngest daughter was like standing up, like like just so into it, like did not want to lose. Like I just saw her competitive side come out so much, and every time I ask her to play, she's like, I don't know, that game, it's super fun, but I get way too into it. It makes me, you know,
It's like a trigger. My brother sends me those of like my nephew playing. It's just such a good feeling. Like I love that aspect about the game is like, like you don't have to be super try hard, whatever. Like you can have fun with it, like across a lot of ages.
right.
And some of my favorite, like I think it was PAX West. Like some of my favorite photos I've ever gotten at a show was just this family, and it was like three young kids, and like the oldest boy or whatever, like literally like 2 feet in the air, jumping like in excitement. I was like, that's so cool. Like being
Yeah.
able to bring that to someone.
That's amazing, man. It's really what that's what it's all about when it comes to games, right? Just
Yeah, exactly. It's for everyone.
for sure. Let's talk a little bit about the development. Like, were there any major hurdles that you guys had to go through, or any major learning experiences that you're like, yo, let's keep this in mind for the next one, or something like
Yeah.
that.
The first one I'll say right away is don't don't develop a game that requires more players than work in your company. Like it sounds obvious, but it's really, really hard to test an 8-player game when you have at most 3 or 4 people, right? Like I mean, which play testing helps a lot with that, but it's so hard. You get a bug and it's by yourself. It's hard to recreate these scenarios where two people are moving, right, and the attack happens in a certain situation. Like doing that by yourself is almost impossible. So that's that's a big one. Two, online games are really hard. Uh, it's just like considering that if you want to make an online game, don't delay thinking about that and planning for that. Meaning, like y- building a single player, like even a local multiplayer experience, and like maybe you develop that for a year or whatever, and then you try to tack on online play. um it's not going to go well. Like you have to have that, like, and you can make your architecture work like kind of like on Switch we had or we have local wireless play, right? Like that wasn't that hard for us to add because when you run the game just standalone local player, local wireless, or online, it's roughly the same architecture. I mean, for the most part, like even when you run local, it's like we have kind of a server sitting there that is that communication. So like the client part of it is the same. It's just what it's talking to is a little bit different. It's like whether it's going out on the internet, whether it's talking to like a local server, a fake server essentially. Like that helps. Like trying to like build a online on top of something that didn't have that in mind is really really hard, and probably going to be like almost like a stopper for doing it. Because like if you architect it a certain way and then you try to like consider online play, it's really really hard. So like, and there's no real like loss to designing your system the other, like even if you don't ever add online play, like you can it still can work the exact same. It just gives you that flexibility. So like if you want it to be online, consider that as soon as possible and plan for that.
I mean, it's the first question out of the mouth of the consumer whenever they see an indie title. It's like, does it have online? Like it's
Yeah, I
almost
mean that's
it.
that is that's the era we live in now, right? Like
Yeah,
and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Like I don't think you should just add it because people want online play. I think also like the last year has made online gaming a huge like savior for a lot of us, right? Like
yeah.
being able to connect with people that we can't go out and see, or um so yeah, I mean it doesn't always work. Like, I don't force online play even though like everyone wants it, but if it works and you think it might be a thing, plan for that. Like consider it upfront.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam, this has been awesome. Thank
Oh
you.
yeah, I'm happy to do it. I'm always happy to do this. It's fun. Uh,
Yeah, this is great, and I just I appreciate the time and getting to hear some of the backstory and some of the story of development and everything. So, thanks again for joining me.
my pleasure. I mean, I like doing these because it's easy to forget like what you've been through and what like it's great to hear like from the mouth of people like that are enjoying it and like and reflect back on stuff. So like I love doing this. Like I'm happy to do it. I'm glad you asked.
Yeah, perfect. All right. Well, you have a fantastic day, my friend, and we'll see you in the next one.
You too. Take care.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Beamable Game Dev Podcast. If you'd like to connect with other game devs, make sure to head on over to our Discord, beamable.com/discord. And if you'd like to try Beamable for free, head on over to beamable.com.